Welcome to the world tonight. 17 days after it went missing, sparking an unprecedented multinational search, Malaysia's Prime Minister Najib Razak has confirmed Malaysia Airlines MH370 ended its journey in the southern Indian Ocean. In the past hour, he said new satellite information shows it went down in a remote location far from any possible landing sites, and he said there are no survivors. Well, the plane lost radar contact on March the 8th en route from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing with 239 people on board. Malaysia Airlines sent out this SMS to family members of the missing passengers before the Prime Minister convened the news conference tonight. The message says Malaysia Airlines deeply regrets that they have to assume beyond any reasonable doubt that MH370 has been lost and that none of those on board survived. And the airline later released a statement to the media saying to family members there are no words that we or anyone else can say which can ease your pain. MAS promises to provide full support and assistance to the relatives of the missing passengers in the weeks and months ahead. And MAS says alongside the search operation there's an intensive investigation for which they hope they can provide answers.
Based on their new analysis, Inmarsat and the AAIB have concluded that MH370 flew along the southern corridor and that its last position was in the middle of the Indian Ocean west of Perth. This is a remote location, far from any possible landing sites. It is therefore with deep sadness and regret that I must inform you that according to this new data, flight MH370 ended in the southern Indian Ocean.
Well, let's go live to Kuala Lumpur and our correspondent Melissa Go. Melissa, an unusually late prime ministerial press conference there, and in this context an unusually decisive one. Just tell us a little bit about the events of this evening and how they've gone down in KL.
Timo, it's a sad day. You heard it from the Prime Minister just now with a heavy heart. He said he needed to break the news. He needed to, at the earliest opportunity, and share this piece of information out as quickly as possible out of commitment to openness and respect for the family members. Now, it's been heartbreaking past 2.5 weeks, but based on the new data analysis done by the commercial satellite provider Inmarsat and AAIB, the UK Air Accident Investigation Branch, the plane flight MH370 ended in the middle of the Indian Ocean west of Perth. Now, this is a remote location far from any possible landing site, and we can assume that the plane went down. And the Prime Minister also urged the media to respect the privacy of the family members, allow them time and space to grieve and mourn their loss. It is a difficult time for everyone here as well. Timo?
What are the plans for the relatives, Mel?
Well, Malaysia Airlines are telling us that we can now assume that the plane went down in the middle of the ocean, carrying 227 passengers, including 2 infants and 12 crew members, adding that Malaysia Airlines will continue to provide assistance and support to the family members. Now, I understand that Malaysia Airlines is arranging to fly some of these family members, wants to go to Australia, to leave immediately. Now, the ongoing multinational search, Malaysia Airlines also promised that will continue as they try to find answers to some of the questions that still remain. Police investigation as well will continue. They will try to get to the bottom of it.
There was a text message that we mentioned from Malaysia Airlines earlier on that they sent to the relatives saying that the assumption is that no one has survived. But that statement didn't appear in the official statement from the airline. Is there a discrepancy here? How do we explain that?
Well, from the Prime Minister press conference just now, he said that no doubt he thinks that we can assume that the plane went down in the middle of South Indian Ocean. Now, he stopped at that. And our news conference, details of it will come tomorrow at the earliest time, 10 a.m. by the Minister in charge, as well by Department of Civil Aviation. We'll be probably finding out more details from then. Now, you know, as I mentioned, it's been very difficult, and we really need to give them time to mourn and to grieve. You know, just in front of me, a lot of the Chinese media, there's been a meltdown. It's been a roller coaster ride too, emotionally for some of the media, and especially from China. They've been following every news conference closely, but it's time to move on and accept. And a lot of people are now having a meltdown. The nation as well has been hoping and praying every day, but we need an end to the agony.
All right, and we'll hear more, obviously, from Malaysia tomorrow. For the moment, Melissa Goh in Kuala Lumpur. Thanks very much indeed. Let's go from KL down to the PS Air Force Base in Perth. Jack Board is there. Jack, the search operation's obviously called off for the night. What are the plans for tomorrow, and what's the mood around Perth today?
Well, we haven't heard any statement yet from the Australian authorities, the Australian Maritime Safety Authority, which has been coordinating this extensive search off the Australian coast. So no word yet from them. We do know that every plane has left the search area. That happened several hours ago, and none of them reported finding any of those objects that have been the focus of the search over the past couple of days. We did receive 2 new updates, 2 new leads in this story today, that there had been objects of note, suspicious items found on the surface of the ocean that did lead to some hope that indeed there may be breakthrough in this story. And of course, the Malaysian authorities now assuming beyond reasonable doubt that indeed the flight has hit the water at some point within these search zones within the Indian Ocean. We understand before this news broke that there were to be 10 planes involved in tomorrow's efforts. That's a similar number to what we had today. That includes Japan and China's very high-tech surveillance aircraft, as well as the United States, Australia and New Zealand. As well, the HMAS Success is the huge vessel with over 200 personnel on board. It is in the vicinity of that search area. They'll be tasked with retrieving any objects. We haven't heard yet from Australian authorities if indeed they have been able to retrieve something tonight, and that's what's led to this announcement from the Malaysian Prime Minister.
We heard also that there may well be a number of the relatives and family members on their way down to Australia. Any preparations underway to welcome them?
Not that we've heard from so far, but of course we are expecting many of the families will be wanting to come to Western Australia. The closest mainland point from where their loved ones have seemingly perished, but no word yet. And of course we have to remember that it's not just Chinese families involved here. There were nationals from a number of countries, including Australians, who are on board that flight. So at this time, the hearts go out to the families throughout the world, and you can imagine there will be somewhat of a pilgrimage to Perth over the coming days, and a sort of farewell for those who have perished here.
All right. Jack, thanks very much indeed. Jack Board live at the PS Air Force Base in Now, our China correspondent, Christine Lim, is at the Lido Hotel in Beijing, where the relatives have gathered, and she joins me now live. Christine, the reaction from the relatives where you are?
Families here were crying, yelling, screaming, most of them rushing out of the holding room of Lido Hotel in the background over here. Now, media crowded here, adding to the chaos by chasing after the relatives for those sound bites. There was even a near accident when a relative nearly fell down from the escalator amid the chaos. Now, media were not allowed into the holding area where the relatives were listening to Malaysian Prime Minister Najib's statement. Now, we were outside the door, but even some 10 meters away, we could hear the crying and screaming inside. Now, over here, additional ambulances have been deployed. Medics were rushing into the room. We counted more than 10 stretchers brought in. I also spoke to medics who said they were only alerted tonight to be deployed here. Now, police also on standby with more than 30 police vehicles parked around here. Certainly a most emotional day for the relatives here. They have been waiting for more than 2 weeks. They have had hope for more than 2 weeks. But psychologists I spoke to say the bigger the hope, the bigger the disappointment. And over here, about 9 p.m. local time, the relatives have been circulating a text message among themselves, and this text message appears to be from Malaysia Airlines, which says Malaysia Airlines deeply regrets that we have to assume beyond any reasonable doubt that flight MH370 has been lost and that none of those on board survived. We must now accept all evidence suggests the plane went down in the southern Indian Ocean. So they have received that text message, and it has been a very emotional night for them.
And what is next for them?
We are waiting to hear more details on what's planned for the relatives over here. Right now, some 500 relatives are gathered in Beijing. They are staying in 5 different hotels in Beijing, most of them staying in Lidu Hotel, where I am here. About 100 people have left Beijing earlier to go back to their hometowns to await for news. We know that Malaysia Airlines earlier said it would be sending relatives to where the plane was once the location has been found. So we are waiting to hear more details about whether there will be a chartered flight for relatives here to go down to Perth after the latest developments.
All right, Christine, thanks very much indeed. Christine Lim, live at the Lido Hotel in Beijing, where the relatives have gathered. Now, we'll bring you up to speed on more of the developments around this missing airplane after the break. Just to recap, Malaysia's Prime Minister has confirmed that it is beyond a reasonable doubt now that the plane ended its journey in the Indian Ocean, somewhere west of Perth. We'll take a look at the resources going into the ongoing search after this. And this was the itinerary of those who were on board. MH370 was carrying 227 passengers and 12 crew, nationals of China making up the majority of those on board. There were also 38 Malaysian citizens on board. 2 of the passengers were Iranians travelling on stolen passports. Altogether, 14 nationalities were represented. The oldest on board was 79, the youngest just 2.